Welcome to Myths and Soul, a quiet place where ancient myths meet modern life. Each story will take you on a journey through timeless legends, uncovering emotional truths, life lessons, and reflections that resonate with your heart today. If these stories bring you comfort, curiosity, or a moment of reflection, you're warmly invited to stay and be part of this journey. Today, I'd like to share the story of Psyche. Losing yourself while chasing love and acceptance. And this is where the story begins. Have you ever felt that parts of your life were decided for you long before you understood what you truly wanted? Not by you, but by family expectations, social pressure, or the quiet fear of disappointing others? Have you ever learned to silence yourself, to adapt, and to endure simply because that was what was expected of you? If that sounds familiar, you are not alone. Thousands of years ago, the ancient Greeks told a story that captures this experience with remarkable emotional clarity: the myth of Psyche and Eros. This is not just a love story. It is a story about identity shaped by society, about obedience mistaken for destiny, about fear and trust, and about what happens when love becomes a place where we disappear instead of a place where we grow. Psyche was a mortal woman, but her beauty was said to rival that of the gods. People traveled from distant lands not only to admire her, but to worship her. Slowly, temples once dedicated to Aphrodite, the goddess of love, began to stand empty, and Aphrodite noticed. In Greek mythology, the gods often represent human emotions taken to their extremes. Aphrodite embodies desire, attraction, vanity, and pride, and when she felt replaced, her response was not wisdom, but jealousy. Instead of asking why people admired Psyche, she chose punishment. Aphrodite ordered her son, Eros, the god of love, to curse Psyche by making her fall hopelessly in love with someone unworthy. But myths rarely go as planned. When Eros saw Psyche, he wounded himself with his own arrow and fell in love with her instead. Psyche was not only admired, she was also feared. Her beauty made her untouchable. People adored her from a distance, yet no one dared to truly love her. Suitors came to look, but none came to stay. Her parents watched their daughter slowly become a symbol rather than a person. And like many parents throughout history, they turned not to her voice, but to authority. They consulted the oracle. The prophecy they received was cruel. Psyche, they were told, was destined not for a human husband, but for a terrifying creature. To fulfill this destiny, she would have to be taken to the edge of a high cliff and left there alone. There was no resistance, no protection, only obedience. Her parents wept, but they obeyed, not because they did not love her, but because society demanded conformity over compassion. In myths, parents often represent more than family. They represent tradition, reputation, and the fear of judgment. Psyche's sisters led her to the cliff and dressed her like a bride. But this was not a wedding. It was a sacrifice. She stood at the edge of the world, abandoned not by strangers, but by those who were meant to protect her. Before Psyche ever loved Eros, before she doubted, and before she lost herself in love, she had already been abandoned to expectation and to a destiny defined by others. And yet, it is precisely here, at the moment when society turns away, that transformation begins. Instead of death, a gentle wind carried Psyche away. She was taken to a magnificent palace hidden from the world, where she lived surrounded by beauty, comfort, and gentle voices, yet always alone. At night, her lover came to her. He was kind, loving, and attentive, and he treated her with care. But there was one rule. Psyche was never allowed to see his face. There could be no light and no questions, only trust. At first, Psyche accepted this arrangement. Love felt warm, safe, and intoxicating. This is where the myth becomes deeply psychological, because many relationships begin this way, not with full knowledge, but with feeling. We do not always see the other person clearly, and we trust emotion before we understand reality. Sometimes that works, but sometimes doubt enters quietly. Psyche's sisters eventually found her again, and instead of being happy for her, they planted fear. They asked why her lover would not show himself, whether he was hiding something, and whether she might be in danger. Their voices echoed the voice of society, the external opinions that slowly replace our inner knowing. Fear began to grow, not because love had changed, but because uncertainty had no boundaries. One night, Psyche lit a lamp while Eros slept. For the first time, she truly saw him, not a monster or a threat, but the god of love himself. In her shock, hot oil spilled from the lamp and burned him. Eros woke, saw the broken trust, and fled. In that moment, Psyche lost everything. This moment is often misunderstood as curiosity or disobedience, but at its core, it is about fear overriding trust. Psyche did not light the lamp because she wanted control. She did so because uncertainty had become unbearable. When love exists without communication, clarity, or emotional safety, the mind fills the gaps with fear. Once trust is broken, even unintentionally, love cannot remain the same. This is a pattern many of us recognize. When we feel insecure, we search for proof, read between the lines, and ask questions we are afraid of answering. And sometimes, in trying to protect ourselves, we create the very loss we fear. After Eros leaves, Psyche is alone, without palace, comfort, or protection. This moment represents something deeply human, the end of love and the loss of identity that often follows. Psyche wanders the world searching for Eros, but also searching for herself. Eventually, she faces Aphrodite, who subjects her to a series of impossible tasks, from sorting endless grains to fetching dangerous treasures and descending into the underworld. Each task strips away illusion, and each trial builds patience, humility, and inner strength. Symbolically, this is not punishment, it is transformation. In modern society, we often confuse love with sacrifice. We are taught that loving deeply means giving more, enduring more, and forgiving endlessly. But the myth of Psyche asks an uncomfortable question. How much of yourself can you give away before love disappears? Psyche had love, but no voice, no visibility, and no certainty. And eventually, that cost her everything. Today, many people remain in relationships where they are unseen, unheard, or unsure because losing love feels scarier than losing themselves. Myths remind us that losing yourself is the greater danger. After completing every trial, Psyche collapses from exhaustion. But this time, she is no longer helpless. Eros returns not because she chased him, but because she has changed. He heals her, and Zeus grants her immortality. Psyche becomes his equal, not a mortal clinging to love, but a woman who has earned wholeness through self-discovery. The name Psyche literally means soul, and this myth reminds us that love matures only when the soul matures first. The story of Psyche is not a warning against love. It is a warning against losing yourself, first to society, then to family expectation, and finally to love. True connection does not require blindness. It requires honesty, trust, and two whole individuals willing to grow together and apart. Sometimes love leaves not to punish us, but to force us to finally meet ourselves. And when we do, love may return, not as dependency, but as choice. Have you ever experienced a moment like Psyche's, when love or expectation asked you to disappear? Or a moment when losing love helped you find yourself? Share your story in the comments, and join me next week for another ancient myth and another timeless lesson about being human.